Hafa Day and welcome. The Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice is now called to order. Today's Thursday, November 5th. The time is 9:13 a.m. Notices for this virtual public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Wednesday, October 28th, and again on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. In the Guam Daily Post on Wednesday, October 28th and Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. This hearing is being broadcast on the legislative TV channels. However, the YouTube broadcast is not live due to technical issues, according to our MIS department. So it will be loaded onto YouTube later today. My apologies for the issues with the live stream on YouTube. The general rules of conduct for this meeting are that the meeting's hosted by the MIS staff at the legislature, and I thank you for your assistance. And the host will mute all Zoom participants until called upon by the chair. The members of the committee wishing to speak may indicate their desire to the chair through the in-app chat feature. We have one agenda item for this hearing. That is Bill number 419-35 COR. It's introduced by myself, Therese Terlaje, an act to add a new Chapter 75A and to amend 75109A of Chapter 75, both of Title 21 Guam Code annotated relative to preserving the land restoration and justice mission of the Chamorrowland Trust. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues, the Minority Leader, Senator Terlaje. Thank you for attending. And Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, thank you for attending. All right, so we'll get straight to our agenda. And before we hear from those who have signed up to testify on the bill, since I introduced the bill, I'm going to just very briefly introduce it. The changes to the Tomorrowland Trust Act proposed in Bill number 419-35 are intended to more clearly demonstrate that the Chamorrowland Trust Program is a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968. This would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. Bill number 419 creates a new Chapter 75A in Title 21 that will be codified and renumbered by the compiler to mirror the current Chamorrowland Trust Act in Chapter 75. It will also include specific changes as outlined in the bill and shall be effective January 1, 2021. The bill seeks to keep Chapter 75 of Title 21 intact for historical purposes and for those who received leases prior to January 1, 2021, Chapter 75 will continue to govern. The following legislative findings and intents were added to the bill to be included in the new Chapter 75A of Title 21 to provide some historical background regarding the Chamorrowland Trust Act. And so I'm quoting now from the bill. It is the intent of Guahan to defend the history and purpose of the Chamorrowland Trust Act created in 1975 by Public Law 12-226 and enacted as Chapter 75 of Title 21 Guam Code annotated. The Chamorrowland Trust Act established a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968 and provide residential and agricultural land for those persons eligible in the form of Chamorrowland Trust Commission leases. Additionally, Guahan intends to support the expansion of the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. Guahan finds that on September 29, 2017, the United States of America filed a case against the CLTC, the United States of America versus Government of Guam Chamorroland Trust Commission, and Administrative Director of the Chamorroland Trust in civil case 17-00113 in District Court of Guam. In that lawsuit, it was alleged, among other things, violations of the U.S. Fair Housing Act. Y legislature in Guam further finds that on December 18, 2018, the U.S. District Court agreed with Guam that at the pleading stage, the court could not conclude that the Chamorro Trust operates as a race-based entity. The court stated that, quote, the record must be further developed to address the question of whether the Chamorro Trust operates instead as a compensatory entity that seeks to implement the return to the people of Guam of land that the United States took from them, unquote. Furthermore, it is possible that, quote, the Chamorro Trust includes some land that was not taken by the United States, but if that is so, that cannot be discerned from the present record, unquote. Based on the state of the record, the court rejected the United States' contention that the court should now, or at that time, determine as a matter of law that Guam is violating the Fair Housing Act. The court further stated that the matter requires further exploration and an expansion of the record in this case. The legislature in Guam further finds that the Office of the Attorney General and Governor's representatives on behalf of the government of Guam, Attorney Michael Phillips and Chairperson Pika Farron on behalf of the CLTC, the Office of the Attorney General on behalf of the CLTC Director and the United States through the Department of Justice entered into settlement conferences to attempt to resolve the lawsuit amicably and without further litigation. At the conclusion of a settlement conference on November 14, 2019, a settlement term sheet was agreed to in principle by the counsel for the parties and subject to approval by the respective parties. On December 26, 2019, the CLTC adopted Resolution 2019-08, which found the settlement terms and the agreement to be favorable for the Chamorro Trust program and its beneficiaries, as it preserves the program intact and would not materially affect existing leaseholders. In addition, the Commission found that the proposed modifications or amendment to the Chamorro Trust Act and the rules and regulations of the Chamorro Trust Commission would more clearly demonstrate that the CLT program is a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968, and would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. On May 29, 2020, after further settlement negotiations, the settlement agreement between the United States of America and Government of Guam, Chamorro Trust Commission, and Administrative Director of the Chamorro Trust Commission regarding U.S. v. Government of Guam et al. Was signed by the Chamorro Trust Commission and Imagahagan Guahan. The legislature in Guahan further finds that the settlement agreement resolves the allegation contained in the lawsuit, and in it, the Government of Guam does not admit liability and denies that the Chamorro Trust Act violates Fair Housing Act. Part of the terms and conditions within the settlement agreement require legislative and administrative changes to the Chamorro Trust Act and/or the rules and regulations of the Chamorro Trust Commission. The legislature in Guam finds that the changes proposed by this act are therefore intended to more clearly demonstrate that the CLT program is a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968, and would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. Some of the other changes that are proposed in Bill 419-35 are that all references to the word Chamorro and the word native in Chamorro, or any variations thereof, will be changed to beneficiary and eligible beneficiary respectively. References to Chamorro homelands shall be replaced with Chamorro Trust property, except as provided in the new 21 GCA 7 in 2 sections. We'll discuss those further. The term Chamorro Trust property means all available lands, which includes Chamorro homelands under the control of the Chamorro Trust Commission under the provisions of the law. An eligible beneficiary of the land trust will now mean any person, regardless of race, color, or national origin. 1, whose land was acquired by the United States government between 1898 and 1968, or descendants of such person. And 2, who either occupied, farmed, or ranched land for residential or agricultural purposes for at least 1 year immediately prior to that land being acquired by the United States government between 1898 and 1968, or descendants of such person. Except that if a person occupied, farmed, or ranched the land on or after December 8, 1941, and the land was acquired at any time after that date and up to 1950, the 1-year tenure need not have occurred immediately prior to acquisition by the United States government. A lessee will now be able to designate property after their death to the lessee's spouse or someone who the lessee has been married to for at least the past 7 years, or to someone who was residing on the property with the lessee in a structure that has been approved as a residence at the time of the lessee's death, or someone who's not an eligible beneficiary as defined under the statute upon the death of the lessee, shall receive a life estate in the remainder of the lease, and upon termination of the life estate, assignment of the lessee's remaining interest in the lease shall be governed by the applicable provisions of the Tomorrowland Trust Act, as if the lessee had died without designating his or her spouse as a beneficiary. Finally, Bill 419 would approve the settlement in the case, and and it would also clarify that the amendments to the Chamorro Land Trust law made pursuant to this act are to strengthen the land trusts and in furtherance of said settlement, provided that settlement shall not absolve or relieve the United States of any liability for land takings or waive the historic demand of the people of Guam for return or restoration of the land, and provided further that the settlement shall include dismissal of allegations against the government of Guam and preclude further challenge of the Chamorro Land Trust law by the same parties on the same grounds, and preclude constitutional challenges of provisions of the Chamorro Land Trust Act as amended or added by this act. For the record, the fiscal note we received from BBMR says that the bill is administrative in nature and poses no fiscal impact to any funds of the government of Guam. Also, for the record, we sent invitations for this public hearing to all CLTC commissioners, past and present. We tried to catch all the past ones. The CLTC Administrative Director, the Attorney General, of course, attorneys representing the CLTC, and to the Department of Land Management and the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission directors. And we will now okay, so we're going to now begin to take testimony from those who are present. But I just got notice that our YouTube feed is now live. And so thank you to the MIS staff. Thank you very much for that. So we're now live on YouTube also. So if anyone of you want to notify anyone, it would be at the Guam Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. Thank you. All right, so we're going to begin now. We have with us, I'm very honored to introduce one of the commissioners on the Chamorro Land Trust. It's been a long I had the pleasure of confirming her to this commission. This is Arlene Berdalio. Thank you, Ms. Berdalio, for being here. And you're invited to present testimony. Just unmute yourself.
We just, Senator, a vocal endorsement for the bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to hear now from the former chairperson of the commission, Pika Farron. Thank you, Pika, for joining us and for being the one who negotiated this settlement for the people of Guam. You may present testimony now, Pika.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Senator. Therese, the lawsuit against the commission, the government of Guam, and the administrative director, alleging discrimination from our program.
Oh, Pika, I'm sorry. Could you begin again? You got interrupted. The feed broke up. So just if you could start again.
Okay, sure. Senator, thank you for having me. You know, I am the former chairperson of the commission, and I was on the commission back in 2017 when the Department of Justice brought this lawsuit against the commission, the government of Guam, and the administrative director. When they brought the lawsuit, you know, anything coming down from the Department of Justice is always really nerve-wracking. We were very worried for the program. Fast forward 3 years, here we are today, and the bill that you've written, I believe it satisfies all of the points that are part of the settlement agreement that the commission has agreed to with the in the lawsuit to settle the lawsuit. I also believe that the bill that you've put together, it really lifts the cloud that I believe has muddled the general public's understanding of the Tomorrowland Trust program. You know, when I joined the commission in 2016, even up to today, there's a lot of people in the general public that don't understand that this Chamorro Trust program is not a discriminatory program. It really is a compensatory program that is meant to rectify the wrongs done in the past. And it's kind of ironic that a lawsuit brought against the land trust by the Department of Justice is what helped us as the commission really better define the program, that it's a land restoration program meant to rectify the land takings of the US from 1898 to 1968. The fact that we can have that statement now in the Tomorrowland Trust, Chapter 75A, you know, I think it really feels full circle. After 3 years of going through this lawsuit and going back and forth with the feds, I'm really proud that you were able to write this bill and that it's presented to this legislature. And I urge all of the senators to please support this bill as it's written. So the settlement agreement that we agreed to, as I mentioned, all of the points are in this bill. It more clearly defines the program as a land restoration program. It also expands eligibility for our program to more accurately find and provide land to all of those that were affected by the land takings. And it also provides a compassionate measure in certain instances for life estates for spouses of eligible lessees. I also appreciate language in the bill that plainly states that the bill and the settlement does not absolve the US from returning or restoring other lands to the people of Guam. I mean, as we know, the Department of Defense still occupies about 1/3 of our island. And the demand for the return of land still remains, but this Chamorro Land Trust program, should this bill pass, I believe it will allow the people of Guam of what we can control, and that would be a program to provide land to families that are descendants of people that had their lands unjustly taken by the US federal government. So I fully support this bill. I appreciate the legislative intent that was included because I think it's very important to include the history of how we got here to this bill and why we made the changes to the bill that were part of the settlement agreement. So although I'm not on the land trust anymore, you know, when I was relieved of my duties, I knew that this day would come that I would be able to provide testimony on this bill. So I appreciate the opportunity. And I fully support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pika, Ms. Farron. And so we're going to hear now from the administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Mr. Jack Hattick. Now, I understand that you were not the administrator at the beginning of the lawsuit, but you definitely were the one at when the settlement agreement was finalized. So Mr. Hattie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator. Good morning to you and the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice. And good morning to all the representatives here, representatives from the Attorney General's Office and former Chairwoman Farron and Attorney Phillips. Thank you so much for the opportunity today. This proposed legislation will finally bring clarity and closure to the mission of the Chamorro Trust as a land restoration program meant to rectify the United States federal government's taking of Chamorro homelands between 1898 and 1968. There are three key aspects of the legislation that are of great benefit to the trust's beneficiaries. Number one, it preserves the program in its entirety after many years of hard-fought legal challenges from its implementation to its fundamental eligibility requirements in such a way that no current leaseholder will be adversely affected. Number two, it clearly restates the eligibility requirements that are not discriminatory. And number three, it further expands said eligibility to include persons who farmed, ranched, and otherwise occupied lands taken and their descendants. So I urge the legislature to please support this very important piece of legislation as we'll finally move forward with the Land Trust mission. And I just wanted to point out again, as I did in my January 9th testimony to the legislature, that the resulting expansion of eligibility will in all likelihood create the need for more personnel here at the Land Trust to effectively and efficiently manage the application, the issuance, and the compliance aspects of the lease process, as well as the monitoring and the reporting requirements thusly created. So again, I encourage the legislature to enact this legislation and work with the commission and the agency in preparing the way forward to process the next generation of eligible beneficiaries created by the settlement agreement and this legislation. So thank you for the opportunity and good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Administrator Hattie. We now have present with us the attorney from the Attorney General. Mr. Canto, would you like to present testimony?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Buenas Tanhafade, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. I am appearing, my name is Jamie Canto. I'm a Deputy Attorney General appearing on behalf of the Office of Attorney General of Guam. And thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill number 419. As you know, our office represented the government of Guam and Tomorrowland Trust Administrative Director Jack Hattie in the September 2017 District Court of Guam civil case number CV 17-00113, United States of America versus Government of Guam, Chamorro Trust Commission, and Administrative Director of the Chamorro Trust in the District Court of Guam, which alleged, as the chairperson stated, that Chamorro Trust program supposedly violated the U.S. Fair Housing Act. And as is captured in the legislative findings and intent of Bill 419, the parties entered settlement discussions in 2019 and successfully reached a settlement agreement in 2020. The terms of the settlement agreement required amendments to the Chamorro Trust Act and the Chamorro Trust Commission rules and regulations. Now, while we do defer to this body on public policy decisions affecting the Chamorro Trust Act and the Chamorro Trust Commission, we offer our wholehearted support for Bill 419 as introduced, to the extent that it includes the required amendments and therefore meets the terms agreed to by our clients and the other parties to the settlement agreement. And I think on behalf of our office, I'd also like to express our deep gratitude to a few people. First and foremost, to yourself, Madam Chairperson, for taking the initiative and introducing this legislation. I do understand that the legislature as a whole was placed in a difficult and oftentimes frustrating position of being asked to make legislative changes pursuant to a settlement agreement that we believed was necessary to carry out what were and what are the true intent and purposes of the Chamorro Trust program. But without having an active role as maybe was desired by members of the legislature. And to be able to be in this position and to take the initiative as you did, Madam Chairperson, to introduce this legislation, the Office of the Attorney General of Guam is entirely grateful, and on behalf of our clients as well. I'd also like to thank former CLTC Chairperson Pika Farron and Attorney Mike Phillips, and also former Deputy Attorney General Ken Orcutt, whose efforts were instrumental and necessary to the resolution that was reached by virtue of the settlement agreement. I mean, I came in towards the end of it to help participate and contribute, but a lion's share of that work that made this possible were by the individuals that I named, and our office is grateful, very grateful to them as well. So we do definitely offer our support to this bill, and we hope that the legislature is able to pass it. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. And thank you for recognizing those who have helped. And I also wanted to recognize Attorney Ken Orcutt. Yeah, he represented us throughout the hearings up to the settlement, I think, when you came in, Attorney Canto. So, and I think you began the settlement agreement discussions. But yes, he did a great job for us, and so did you. So thank you very much. And Attorney Phillips, would you like to present testimony?
Yes, Madam Chair. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Chairperson Terlaje and Senators Terlaje and Dr. Kelly Marsh. I'd like to also recognize and thank former Chair Pika Farron. It's nice that we're all kind of gathered together again. Although this is a very formal situation, it's also historical, and I hope that we don't lose sight of where we are again in history, because, you know, as that old adage goes, history tends to repeat itself. I'd like to recognize Auntie Arlene, member of the commission. I think it's very noteworthy that not only is Arlene Berdalio here, but of course her late husband is the author and the architect and the initial and strongest proponent of the Tomorrowland Trust. And we would not be here today if it were not for Uncle Paul. Director Hattick and Attorney Canto, nice to see everybody again. Madam Chair, I'd like to just explain a few points briefly, and then if anybody has any questions, my intent, and that's why I invite anyone that disagrees to contribute to this short record. My intent is to ensure that if your kids and their kids ever have to tell the Guam story again, that we have it somewhere, because that's really what we were missing here. Not the, I'm sorry, this went off. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's really what this was about. We had two land restoration programs before. This is not a foreign. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is not a foreign idea. This is something that actually was near a mirror program of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. But before that, we had a federal land restoration program. We had a local land restoration program. And so this is not an excuse, albeit it is very powerful today in the courts. And you correctly summarized what happened in the district court. It was very, very powerful decision in favor of Guam. But it's also very, very accurate. And I think that when the United States heard that possibility, that the judge is making it very clear, I think, in a very professional manner, that if this is a land restoration program, then it's okay. And when you go back in law, we're well grounded, both by the feds mandating land restoration for all the land that was taken, and also the local program. The Tomorrowland Trust Act You know, a lot of people remember the 1990s when we brought that case. You were part of the legal team, Senator, as was Judge Berdallo. And we brought that case representing Angel Santos, Ed Beneventi, the Nashon. But actually, it goes back to 1974 when it's being drafted. And at that time, I believe that I know, of course, because I spoke with Uncle Paul, I know the intent. But when you're drafting, as you know, legislation, and you probably know right now better than anybody on Guam because of your experience, you look at what words and provisions you can include that are consistent with the way the Constitution and laws are interpreted today. So you look towards, in our case, the Organic Act, you look towards case law. At that time, modeling a program after the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, quite frankly, was ingenious. How do you complain about a program that is right next door in Hawaii, that's approved by the United States, and it's a state program, so not a big deal. And so I really believe that the intent at that time was not so much with these legal words, right, with regard to some of the amendments that we're making today, not because they were moving away from land restoration, not because it was intentional to narrow the program, it was necessary legally. And I believe the record backs that up. And the reason I say that is because today, now that we're able to more accurately reflect the intent of everybody, I want to make sure people know that, quite frankly, none of us can take credit for this. This is something that was actually intended before. The challenge we had is, one, not everybody knows the Guam story, and two, very few people share the Guam story. But when we share the Guam story, it's I wouldn't call it an easy sell, but it is very understandable. It's unique because of everything we've been through, but it's nothing out of the box. It really isn't. This is something very, very straightforward. And so at that time, Senator, the 1974 draft signed into law, passed in 74, signed into law in 75, actually repealed our land restoration program and reenacted it. And so again, there can really be no challenge with regard to the intent. The reason that in 1974, the bloodline definition was used was because, number one, it covered most people, and it mirrored what was already approved in Hawaii. It's also important to note that in the 60s, when we passed our own land restoration program, the feds, I believe, did theirs in 52, that Congress had the right, not the right, they had the authority, they maintained the authority to repeal our laws. And as we know from the famous Gita case, when they choose not to, then the courts, at least on one occasion, have interpreted that as congressional approval. And so we went into this case, whether everybody knew or not about it or not, with a very strong
Mr. Phillips? Mr. Phillips, you were interrupted as well by a bad feed. So I think if you could go back a little, and you're on mute right now, if you could unmute and just go back up. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that there was never a single material allegation made by the federal government that was borne out. Now, fortunately, not too far along the litigation, we worked very, very hard to resolve this. But a necessary part of that was addressing internally and with the United States these very serious allegations, none of them were borne out. And so really, when you look at it and you ask, why did this happen? It shouldn't have happened, but it did. And so we're here today. But the complaint, I guess I should be very specific about it. The complaint allegations that someday someone might read, which contain some horrendous allegations, or were not only were they never proven, I believe, and I think Attorney Canto will support me on this, that all the facts we were able to present proved that they were incorrect. And that's not really our burden, but I think with the help of many in the government, we were able to prove that it just wasn't true. And that's very, very important. When you, person, Pika Farron, Governor Cow, at that time, General Barrett Anderson met me and allowed me to represent the commission. That was something that one I'll never forget. But I really appreciate your confidence. You may or may not remember when I was speaking with Governor Calvo and General Barrett Anderson. I was honest with them. I've done these cases. You've done these cases. The table was the Guam story, because that's what this case is about, the Guam story, or anything like that. It's, hey, do we fit what is legal today? And the question is absolutely. And so when that became apparent, and that became apparent, I think, Madam Chair, after the first decision by the district court, the next challenge was whether or not the United States attorneys themselves would understand and would agree. And I think that without question, they did their due diligence, but I think it's very, very clear that they agree, because we would not have the settlement today if they didn't agree that the concept of land restoration for everybody is the correct thing to do. I want to go over quickly the two changes. So again, we're very, very clear with regard to the amendment today. The first significant definition was mirrored after the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. It was a bloodline definition. And then in 1980, under the authorship, I believe, of, the late Senator Dick Taitano, it changed to something that at that time would fit the Organic Act. So it was with the under those that became citizens under the authority and enactment of the Organic Act, not just pursuant to the Organic Act, but pursuant to the authority and the enactment. That you may remember, Senators, the key language that I believe allowed us to prevail in 1992 while representing Angel Santos and the Nation. It was that key language that this is a political definition. But again, although the late senator is not here, I spoke with him, and I know that his intent, and I've referred to it many times as ingenious, was coming up with a definition that served that purpose and met constitutional muster, as we say. And I think that it's important for people to understand that neither Paul Berdalio, Senator Berdalio, or Senator Taitano were thinking, hey, bloodline would be cool. And no, let's do it pursuant to the Organic Act, because people understandably have criticized both definitions without really understanding that both authors really knew what they were doing. Paul Berdalio's language was able to survive for a long, long time, decades. Senator Taitano's language has survived till today. And so I think Mr. Canto will agree. It's not something we would today want to go into court and roll the dice, but a lot of credit has to be given to these two individuals, because like yourself and those participating today, this is your bill. So, I don't mean to water it down. This is yours, like with Paul Berdalio. A lot of thought goes into why are these words chosen. Now, this is unique, and Attorney Cantor, I think, explained it very well. It's got to be frustrating for the legislature and yourself, namely, to be on the side while a lawsuit's going on, and they've not involved you, or they've not sued the legislature, and you're not representing the people of Guam, and you demonstrated amazing patience, and yet stayed on top of everything and were extremely cooperative. And I think former chairperson Pika Farron will agree that that really contributed to this. I also believe that our ability to settle and our ability to take positions inherently included a sincere belief that the legislature would come along, notwithstanding the difficulty with regard to this very unique posture where you have one branch of government that has total authority. This is a creature and a creation of the legislature. And yet we are the ones that are making these decisions, it appears, in the district court and quite frankly, behind closed doors negotiating for quite some time. And so here we are today with an amendment to words, but the difference, Senator, between today and 1974 and 1980 is this is actually the Chamorro Land Trust program. You can call it what you want, but at the end of the day, it's a land restoration program. That's all it was ever intended to be. And I won't go into the details. I just want to make sure that I state this. Anybody that doesn't know the history of Guam will not understand why title was not key. Title and ownership are concepts. They're not absolutes. And so in some societies, like at that time, the history of Guam from 1898, of course before, but 1898, when the federal government began seizing land, all the way through, and of course the year 1968 was picked, but a huge portion of that occurred right after the war and the years after that. When they took somebody's land, they affected not just their descendants and the landowner, but many people that had land use rights. And for those that were on Guam, it's very difficult to distinguish while you're working the land and I'm working a piece of land, whether you own land and whether I'm just kind of using the land. And we're able to back that up. That was testified to in 1936 by B.J. Berdalio and F.B. Leon Grown. They explained this concept a lot more effectively than I can to the United States Congress. And they were just as puzzled, I think, as most people from the mainland United States would be. And that's why they ask questions like, wait a minute, you let somebody use your land and you pay the taxes? And of course, the answer is yes. And you don't charge them rent? No. And it's not like crop sharing. You don't get like a percentage? No. Why? That's how we do it. And so as much as democracy, as we've seen, may puzzle people from different countries, oh, believe me, the land use rights that occurred before the United States took all the property would puzzle most people, but not the people of Guam. That's exactly how it was. And I want to say for the record, it was not race-based. It wasn't like you're Chamorro and I'm not by bloodline, so guess what? You get to use land and I don't. No, it's a Guam thing. It was a people of Guam thing. And that's what I believe, and it's very important for people to understand today, Senator, that the language you've used has now, without Paul Berdalio being here, without Dick Titano being here, you've captured all the people that they missed. And I know it had to pain them. They had to miss veterans, people of Guam that were serving in the United States military that received their citizenship in that manner and not through the authority and the enactment of the Organic Act. They were all excluded in both amendments. And from the very beginning, they could not participate because they didn't meet that definition. That definition really came from Hawaii, and it was a legal definition that survived. So that's one group, but there's more. There's people that had land taken in the early 1900s, had nothing left, and they may have moved to one of our neighboring islands. They may have even moved to the mainland. There's people that endured the war, and then on top of that had their lands taken, or people that for probably more than a century, in some cases, at least many cases, more than a year, were using land virtually unrestricted. And so the idea that, well, you don't technically own it, I mean, we all have that experience, either ourselves or with friends on this island, where whether it's children or neighbors or people like that, and that's what it was like. And so to come up with a program at that time, Senator, that would include everybody was impossible. But the intent was there. Intent by the federal government, intent by our local government, intent by all our leaders. And it was our practice. That's exactly what people did. So when they took, at one point, it appears they took the entire island. Quite frankly, I always thought from the records that the United States only took a little bit more than 2/3. But as part of this case, Mr. Borja, who's really an amazing expert on the history of land on Guam, he testified in one of the depositions that at some point the United States took all the property. They gave a big chunk, or not a big chunk, but they gave back 20-30% shortly after that. So it looked like they only took 2/3. I think in all our research, we came up with, I thought was 2/3. I had no reason to dispute that. And then when Mr. Borja testified, I thought, whoa, you're talking about an incident that has never been repeated in the United States, ever. And so when people are looking at a program saying, well, that's different, of course, you don't have the history that we have here. And the reason, Senator, I think this is a day of celebration is not just because we, quote unquote, did very, very well in the case. Just defending it and prevailing is amazing. But I think Mr. Canto and Chairperson Pica Ferrin and yourself appreciate that we came out of this with much more than prevailing on defense. We were able to craft, with the support of the United States, the program that mirrors exactly what was going on Guam before the land takings, to the extent possible. I share Director Hattick's excitement about, hey, by the way, now that we've got through this, we got things to do. And you, like myself, I think many people have considered us a friend of the Tomorrowland Trust Act. But I've been on the other side, forcing our government, as you have, to implement this. And so I'm not shy about saying I can be a thorn in somebody's side when they're not moving on this. And I think that with your work and with the work of everybody that's been named here, and many I'm sure that we've missed, we now have a program that allows the legislature and the governor, and of course the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and its director, to really move forward aggressively. I mean, really move forward. This was drafted in 1974, signed in 1975. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy the fact that some people remember we had something to do with what mistakenly is called the implementation. We didn't implement this. This was implemented in 1975. And there were members of the commission appointed. And so it just didn't move. And so the same thing happened after we won the case. Lots of work was done, don't get me wrong, but just not the distribution of land and allowing our people to finally return quickly to what was an established practice here that had nothing to do with race. So that's where we are today. I really believe that your work here and the act itself, as I think you and everybody can sense from the positive testimony, not only is the right thing to do, but it's the correct almost mirror. We're no longer mirroring our program after the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. We're mirroring our program after the story of Guam. And I think that's amazing. I think that if Senator Berdallu could have done that, he would have done that. But to his credit, he defined what needed to be in order to make this act fly in 75. And again, Senator Taitano, to his credit, and I spoke with both, so I know this was the intent. But like yourself in 92, the arguments we made are not the arguments that myself, Ken Orchid, and now Mr. Canto make in court. It's the same program, but we need to make sure that it complies with the interpretations today. I would, and I'll stay on, of course, Madam Chair, for questions, but I would like to end with something that I think relates to this, but really may appear not to have any relationship at all. What has gone viral on Guam, and I'm not a real social media person, but I even saw it, that student that was attempting to spell Guamanian in the spelling bee. For those that haven't seen it, you need to look it up. It's painful. You got to have a sense of humor to listen to this poor, not poor student, this ordinary, very bright student struggle through wondering what the heck is a Guami or a Guamanian. And she spelled it right. But we've got to realize that's what life is like. Somebody told us and sold us a fantasy years ago that we have a desk at the White House and everybody's grateful for what we did in World War II. That doesn't exist. What exists is what you will see on that YouTube video. And that is, nobody there cares. Everybody's doing their own thing. And so we need to act. If we don't take care of ourselves, that's what happened. 1952, the feds passed the land restoration program. Nothing was done. If we don't do anything, it's never going to be done. With your language here, Senator, there's no barriers. And I really believe that, like Dick Taitano and Paul Berdalio, this will survive decades and maybe hopefully indefinitely longer. Unless there's any questions, I want to thank everybody for the work. This is a perfect example of when there's teamwork and an understanding. And while it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of cooperation. Boy, Guam does very, very well. And I congratulate you and everybody. As you, I think, agree, having Angel Santos and the Nacion as a client was an amazing honor. But having the commission and Pika Ferrin as the chair is just as big. I mean, it's amazing. And I'll never forget this accomplishment. And I want to make sure that everybody knows they really are to be congratulated. Oftentimes, Senator, when history is taking place, people don't recognize the significance. Paul Berdalli was a visionary, but I bet he himself didn't envision all that would come from this. And the same as Dick Taitano, they're just doing their work. And so you're doing the same, and everybody here's doing the same. But this is historic, and it's a really, really good day for the people of Guam. And I thank you for all your support in bringing me on to represent the commission. It would not have happened without you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. And thank you for on this record that hopefully will be preserved also for posterity, that you've told the Guam story. And it's my understanding from Pika Ferrin, the chairperson, and from Attorney Canto, that you were very instrumental in telling that story to the federal attorneys who were involved in this case and being able to convince them of our history and enlighten them and the judges. So thank you again. And
Senator, may I add one thing, that yes, if BJ Berdalio and FB Leon Guerrero had not gone to Congress, which appeared at that time to be futile, I would not have been able to share that part of the Guam story. How do you debate two gentlemen that in 1936 are saying exactly what we're saying today? Any reasonable person would say, okay, you're not making this up. And the same goes for all the work that Paul Berdalio and Dick Taitano and everybody did. Even all the way down to the litigation in 92. We know our client Angel Santos is not a real fan of leaving things to court. Angel's best method, I think, and most effective and preferred method was protest. And he's like, this is how we'll change it. And so they'll occupy the grounds at Adelup, but we occupy the courtroom. And I think it goes to show that when you do all of it, those that are appearing today and going on the record, those that go into court, those that go to Congress or here at the legislature, as I mentioned, they all contribute, and you never know when. It's so important to make the record. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I must say, if BJ and FB did not tell the Guam story back then, I don't know if we would have done the same in 92, and we're doing the same today. So it's really important that we continue to do this.
Again, Zizus Masi, I'm very grateful for your participation and all of you as teamwork. Yeah, I know that it took a lot of time, hours for Pika and the Tomorrowland Trust commissioners, the administrators, and of course the Attorney General's office, Zizus Masi, for keeping us informed as you went along. And it was it's a little tough. My first reaction, of course, was remove the word Chamorro. It broke my heart. But I understand, what the goal is, and that you're going to expand this program nonetheless. And so, Zizus Masi, and I'm very honored to be part of ensuring that the original intention is honored. So I'm going to open now for questions from the panel, beginning with our Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano. She is our Assistant Majority Leader.
And I appreciate being able to come before the members of the CLTC again. They have come here before and they have provided this testimony. And as the chairwoman was saying, I too was very, very wary, and I appreciated their testimony and involvement so much. It meant so much because I wanted to make sure that the intent wasn't damaged, because it is so important to keep for Guam's story. So all of the testimony, sorry, as I've gotten older, I get more sentimental more easily, but like I said, it meant everything to me, and that you have shared it again today so that the public can hear, and that we're all reassured, that the senators can be reassured that it provides that original intent. It does good things for the people of Guam. It was so important to hear that, it puts things into place so that now, the Guam land use, the CLTC can move forward aggressively. And so there were some things I wanted to point out. And as I said, knowing that the people here have the best interest of the island at heart, that is incredibly important, and that the intent has been preserved, it's been broadened as has been mentioned. And our story about who the people of Guam are, who Chamorros are, and the history of the land, it's such a powerful, important thing. It's one of the first things that I had my students at the University of Guam read, and it's still there. It still holds up. Attorney Mike Phillips' article on land. It's still available in Guampedia if anybody hasn't read it yet. So with this, I also wanted to mention that there is a map at MARC that I've been told of. I haven't seen it myself, but Dr. Michael Clement had told me about it. And it is a map of Guam where essentially the entire island was taken over by the military. I mean, it's plotted out in this map. And as I remember it, but memories aren't the most perfect things, so it's better to talk to him and find out. But this map is there at MARC, and just in some small coastal areas, it said something like, Chamorro reservations, and that was what was going to be left. So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go and see that. And having that story for Guam be captured and be what is put forth, that is so important. There's a term that I've used quite often. I found it from somebody else and I never was able to re-find it to properly credit the person. But within the United States, we are visibly absent. And it means we're so absent, it's noticeable, like you can see it. You can see we're not on the flag. You can see that we're not in maps. You can see that we're not in their national weather reports. You can, maybe people don't know it, but we're not part of their census. We have a separate website, like time after time in US history textbooks that are 1,200 pages long, we are a sentence. And people in the US, most of them don't know that we're even here, and yet it's been 122 years. So that this is now more tailored for Guam and tells Guam's story and is a restoration program as it was intended to be, while the claims for more just issues is still intact. So because I've been at other hearings, because the legislative intent was so well thought out and provides information, and the testimony was so thorough, I don't really have any questions. But again, I thank everybody for all of their years of dedication to this, to do right by the community. And so for me, I support this effort, and I'm very proud to have just a small presence amongst all of this. Sizosmasi, Madam Chair.
Senator Kelly Marsh Dartino, I very much appreciate your testimony, and you got me all emotional here too. But Senator Terlaje, Minority Leader.
Oh my God, I thought I would hold it together, Madam Chair, but you started in again. And yeah, I guess it is very emotional. And because, you know, I'm amongst some great people here today that's made a difference. You know, Senator Therese Terlaje, you know, your advocacy, you know, and Senator Kelly Marsh. I can't come close to all the work that you've done to ensure, you know, our culture stays alive, as well as the intent of what this was supposed to be all about. Okay, as I get older, I get emotional too, Kelly. But you can tell the three of us that are here today, we're here because of this, you know, and the importance of moving forward. All the work that you've done, Pika, I greatly appreciate it. And thank you for being here today, you know, just to support this. We know the work you've done. I mean, the community knows the work you've done. I think I've had so many emails on your behalf, you know, to stay where you are, to continue the good work. And I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, Mike has been my teacher, my historian, Attorney Phillips, and I spent hours on the phone talking to him so that he can school me from what has happened in the past. And I think it's up to us, our community, to keep our language, to keep our culture alive. It's up to us. You know, whether you're Chamorro or not Chamorro, you're Guamanian, it's important to recognize who we are. And not only when there's a threat from the Asian side to our island that we become recognized. I think that we need to do more out there to educate the world about Guam and who we are. 4,000 years old. That's amazing, you know. And we have so much history, more than any island, more than Hawaii has. And but I remember during the public hearing we had earlier on this legislation, Jamie, you were there too as well. And we were talking about having to change certain languages in here from the homeland, Chamorro homelands to now Chamorrowland Trust Properties. And, you know, that's, I think, you know, Chamorrowland Trust Properties, at least we can keep the Chamorro word in there, you know, that's what I'm grateful for right now. So I greatly appreciate all the work you guys have done. And I hope that I can continue to be an advocate along with everybody that's here. I feel like I'm a novice when it comes to something like this, but I want you to all know that my heart is there on keeping this alive and providing those who've lost their land, you know, during a time that was very vulnerable for our island. And I just wanted to say, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity for me to say what I had to say. And thank you, Senator Marsh, as well, for all your advocacy on this and teaching our next generation about who we are, the Chamorro people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Marsh, if you would be able to get a copy of that map, I would be very honored to put that as part of the committee report, since it was discussed by Attorney Phillips and yourselves during this discussion. And I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask of the panel. And I want to remind everyone, we're going to have an additional hearing on Monday, November 9th at 5 p.m. This is because I believe that this legislation was that important, and I wanted to have a hearing after 5 for anyone who was working and was not able to attend these hours to attend at that time. And just to give additional input for the public, I want to be very transparent that what we're trying to do here and make sure that we can get the community to understand in full. And I want to again thank you attorneys and you commissioners and administrators for your help in informing the community through our various public hearings. You've been very patient with me as well. You know, my asking you to repeat it, tell us again, why are we going to do this, and tell the public. So thank you very much. It's it's been very helpful. All right, so my first question is the settlement agreement negotiated, you believe, I'm gonna ask this to the Attorney Canto and Attorney Phillips, do you believe this is the best deal for the government and the people of Guam?
Mr. Canto, do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Yes, please, go ahead, Mike, thank you.
Okay. Senator, to answer your question directly, when you use the word best, best would probably include one or two other things. I would call it remarkable. I would say that when you look, whether historically back to 1898 to the present, or you look at the last few years of this litigation, it's a remarkable ending with this legislation. Not only have we defended the act, defended, in my case, the commission and all the work that that Pika and everybody and those that have come before have done, but almost like through this case, we're allowed now to go forward with something better than we had before. And so I'm sure, like any piece of legislation, both Mr. Canto and myself might be able to add one extra line if living in a perfect world, we're not. And I would kind of be betraying the confidences of the negotiations, but I want you and everybody listening to be assured that when myself and Pika Farron, Mr. Canto, when we walked out, we had our heads held high. I mean, we got every single thing that I think was needed. I think the one exception, and it's important that the record reflect, so nobody is able to tell a story maybe that grows one day into a fish that never really existed. The idea of the consideration of things like probate and somebody getting a life estate that may not otherwise qualify. That's something that that we gave in, and as I said, without revealing, you know, the actual back and forth of the negotiations. I think that's something that we gave in, and Jamie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and Pika, maybe after 3 or 4 hours of really considering whether or not we could accept that, not would, could. And I think once we got past the very difficult, very huge wall of whether we could really even consider accepting something like that, then we really thought about whether we should. And Senator, when you look at, if you were to have a kind of a term sheet or a list of all the things that we got and the 1 or 2 concessions, I think you would say that even based on your legal experience, that it's very, very rare that a case turns out this well. And so we were very fortunate for all the reasons explained to come out of this with really much more than a settlement. But because of that settlement, albeit not perfect, but remarkable, you're able to move forward with this legislation now, and our people are able to move forward.
Thank you. Attorney Canto.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. The best deal is, or the best possible settlement agreement is a relative term, as Attorney Phillips stated. I do think that we came out way ahead in the bargain. There are a couple things that I think that the legislature may, and the people of Guam may believe are losses or concessions, whereas I would argue that they are not necessarily. For instance, elimination of the word Chamorro from the act. In terms of that, you know, Attorney Phillips told me something that you, Senator, said, and those words continue to stick with me. And that is that the federal government did not take land from the people of Guam because they're Chamorro, because that's what predominantly who lived here at the time. We're all Chamorro people. That's not why they took it. So in terms of restoring land to people who had it taken away, it's not being returned to them because they're Chamorro either. It's because they had their land taken away. And so this is something that benefits the people of Guam as a whole. The fact that a vast majority of people who lived here at the time the land was taken were Chamorro was incidental to the fact that they took it. And the fact that it's being returned and able to be returned is not reflective of race, but trying to correct an injustice that was committed upon the people of Guam, regardless of race. We all know who lived here at the time and whose land was taken away, and no one's going to forget that, whether the word Chamorro appears in the Tomorrowland Trust Act or not. And I think that's important to remember. And again, Senator, your words to that effect will always stay with me, that I heard spoken through Attorney Phillips. And another issue that may be seen on its face as a concession or a loss in the negotiations in terms of providing a life estate, I think I do agree. A perfect settlement agreement, which is the product of compromise from both sides, it wouldn't be a settlement agreement, it'd be everything we wanted. That is something that was conceded or compromised on, I would say, only after long and arduous negotiation on that point, because we understood how important it is in terms of preserving the spirit of the program. However, I don't think that we can forget that it may be possible that a beneficiary or someone who has received a Chamorro Trust lease, if they do have a home that they wouldn't want their spouse, regardless of whether they would have been eligible, to be able to live in what is their family home, at least for the remainder of their life, and possibly raise their children there as well. So, I mean, we do understand that those are maybe desires that some participants in the program would want anyway. And I think that's something to remember as well. So I don't even think that the supposed downsides are necessarily that, or can be characterized as such, because of the reasons I said. I think overall, Madam Chairperson, that this is a great settlement for the program and for the people of Guam.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Attorney Canto, it just dawned on me while you were talking that maybe some won't understand the term life estate. Could you just state that for the record so that it would be very obvious?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Just that the ability to remain and live on the Chamorro Trust property would only be for the extent of that person's life. And then after they are no longer living, it would not be passed down. It would revert to the Chamorroland Trust and become once again a part, a parcel of property that is part of that trust.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, that Senator, would apply to individuals that otherwise would not qualify. So you have those unique situations, maybe not so unique in the future, where a spouse doesn't otherwise qualify. Then this provision is in there to protect that circumstance that may happen in the future, where that spouse who is qualified passes away and leaves a widow or widower that is not qualified. Under this legislation pursuant to the settlement, that person would be able to stay for the remainder of his or her life.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're talking about people that are otherwise not qualified. That's why that was allowed.
All right, because otherwise the law already states who can inherit after
That's very
somebody.
clear.
Yeah,
And that would
yeah.
continue to be followed, right? And I believe under the legislation, everything in the past remains. And one of the concerns we had, and I'm appreciative that there was never a motion filed to stay the actions of the commission. They could have continued. I encouraged them to continue, and to some extent they did. And there's nothing here that I see that is retroactive. Everything is prospective, and I hope that it's clear from the legislation, because it's clear when I read it, that everything is prospective. So we're not disturbing anything. Moving forward, there are those changes. The big ones, of course, are now we have so many people from Guam that are now eligible that weren't eligible before, and unjustly so. But kind of a necessary evil to make the program work back then. Now they're all included.
That's great. Pika, can I ask you, are you the one that signed the settlement agreement?
Hi, yes, the commission authorized me to sign on the commission's behalf, just as they had authorized me to negotiate on the commission's behalf.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I just want to put it on the record. Did you sign that settlement agreement with the full understanding and consent of the commissioners?
Absolutely. And
All right.
support.
Okay, wonderful. Is there anyone, I don't have any more questions unless my colleagues do, or if anyone else on the panel would like to say something. Add anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much again. And again, I'm very honored and grateful for all the work that you have done to preserve our Tomorrowland Trust, to protect it for future generations. We've seen I think we're seeing today the continued impact of the massive land takings on Guam's families. Too many people live in poverty over 8 decades later, without a stable place to live, without ability to use land to provide for their families who are severe and whose lives continue to be severely disrupted. It took years of division, courage, advocacy, protests, even lawsuits to get where we are today. And in honor of those who preserved these rights for us, we must never stop fighting for, protecting, and expanding the potential of this land and its precious resources to nurture and sustain future generations. As lawmakers, I believe it's our duty to safeguard the land restoration mission of the trust, to protect the trust from being raided by special interests, to manage the trust better and make it more conducive to thriving residences, to agriculture, to cottage industries, and to carry these homeland programs into perpetuity for future generations so that we truly remedy the long-term injustice of massive land takings. I want to encourage the public who are watching to provide testimony regarding these significant changes to the Chamorro Trust Act. It's important that we hear from the community. And we will have another hearing on Monday, November 9th at 5 p.m. It will be virtual. Please contact my office if you would like to participate via Zoom, or you may tune in again by the legislature's YouTube channel or the legislature's TV channels. There being no additional individuals to present further testimony, this committee will continue to remain open for the acceptance of any testimony until November 13th. You may submit testimony to my office at the mailroom at the Guam Legislature in the Guam Congress Building or through email at senatorterlajeguam@gmail.com. It's now 10:30 a.m. Situs Ma'asi for all of your participation and your efforts in this regard. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jamie, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And